Now let's talk about different types of attacks. An attack refers to any deliberate action or set of actions that aim to compromise the confidentiality, integrity, or availability of information system. These attacks can target various components of an information system, including networks, devices, software, and data. Attackers can be launched by malicious actors such as hackers, cyber criminals, or even insiders. Insiders, in the sense, maybe the employees of the same organization. So, even insiders with malicious intent can launch an attack. Now, let's see some of the common types of attacks. First one is malware. So, if you want to know in depth about any of these topics, most likely I have a video on it. Just search for cyberplatter malware, types of malware, and you should be able to find something, or type cyberplatter cross-site scripting attack or cyberplatter's SQL injection. You should be able to find those topics in depth, explained in depth. Okay. Going back to malware, malware is short for malicious software. So, in a broad term, this includes various types of harmful software designed to disrupt, damage, or gain unauthorized access to computer systems, networks, or devices. Malware can actually take many forms and serve different purposes. We'll see some of the types of malware. First one is viruses. Viruses attach themselves to executable files or documents and require user interaction to spread. Like, for example, suppose say there is a user, he executes an infected file or opens an infected document. Once he does that, the virus gets activated and it replicates itself by attaching copies of its code to other files on the system. Then another malware type is worms. These are self-replicating malware that can spread across networks and systems without requiring user interaction. They exploit vulnerabilities in network protocols or software to infect vulnerable systems automatically. Okay. Another type of malware is Trojans. These are malware disguised as legitimate software or files to trick users into installing them. Trojans often create backdoors on infected systems, allowing attackers to gain unauthorized access, steal data, or install additional malware. Next type of malware is ransomware. This malware encrypts files or locks users out of their systems and demands a ransom payment in exchange for restoring access. Ransomware attacks can have devastating consequences for individuals and organizations, causing data loss, financial losses, and operational disruptions. So, ransomware uses strong encryption algorithms to encrypt files stored on the infected system. This makes them inaccessible to the users. After encrypting the files or locking the system, the ransomware typically displays a ransom note informing the victim of the attack and providing instructions on how to pay the ransom. This ransom note often includes details such as the amount of the ransom, the cryptocurrency, like how do they have to make the payment, example Bitcoin, and a deadline for payment. So when I say encrypts files, it means encryption is the process of converting plain text, like ordinary readable data, into ciphertext. This is unreadable data. This is done using an algorithm and a key. Understand that ransomware encrypts files, making it inaccessible, and then demands for a ransom payment. Next type of virus is spyware. This malware is designed to secretly monitor and collect information about a user's activities such as browsing habits, keystrokes, or personal information. Spyware can be used for various purposes, including stealing sensitive information, tracking user behavior, or conducting targeted advertising. Next type of malware is adware. This malware displays unwanted advertisements or redirects users to malicious websites without their consent. Adware often accompanies free software downloads and can degrade system performance or compromise user privacy. Another type of malware is rootkits. These malware hide their presence and activities from detection by antivirus software or system administrators. Rootkits typically replace or modify critical system files and processes to maintain persistence and control over infected systems. Next type of malware is fileless malware. This malware operates in memory or leverages legitimate system tools and processes to evade detection by traditional antivirus solutions. Fileless malware can be more difficult to detect and remove than traditional malware because it leaves little or no trace on disk. So these are the types, some of the types of malware. Protecting against malware requires a multi-layered approach. Like, for example, regular software updates, robust antivirus, and anti-malware solutions, and then user education and awareness training, then strong password policies and proactive monitoring for suspicious activity. Then you can use EDR solutions, endpoint detection and response solutions. So these are some of the countermeasures against malware. Next type of attack that we'll discuss is DDoS. Actually, DOS and DDoS. DOS stands for Denial of Service Attack, and DDoS is Distributed Denial of Service Attack. Both of these attacks are types of cyber attacks that aim to disrupt the availability of services or resources by overwhelming a target system, network, or website with a flood of traffic or requests. So first let's talk of denial of service. This is like, imagine that someone is blocking the entrance to a store, preventing customers from getting in. They might do this by standing in the doorway themselves or by sending a huge crowd that fills up the store, making it impossible for real customers to enter and shop. Now, if you want to imagine DDoS, then it is not just one person, but a whole group of people that are blocking the entrance to the store. They are not just standing in the doorway themselves, they are also bringing in friends to help block every possible entrance, overwhelming the store with so many people that it becomes completely inaccessible to genuine customers. In both of these cases, the goal is to make the store unavailable to customers. The difference lies in the scale and coordination of the attack. DOS attack, it typically has one attacker causing the disruption. While in DDoS attack, multiple attackers join forces to make the impact much more severe. So in DOS attacks, a single attacker or a group of attackers attempts to overwhelm a target system, network, or website with a flood of traffic or requests, rendering it inaccessible to legitimate users. The goal of a DOS attack is to exhaust the target's resources, such as bandwidth, memory, or processing power, causing the system to become slow, unresponsive, or completely unavailable. Common techniques used in DOS attacks include flooding attacks, resource exhaustion, and protocol exploitation. In flooding attacks, the attacker floods the target with a high volume of target or requests, such as TCP SYN flood, UDP flood, or HTTP flood attacks. In resource exhaustion, the attacker consumes the target's resources, such as bandwidth, CPU, or memory by exploiting vulnerabilities or insufficient resource management. In protocol exploitation, the attacker exploits the weaknesses in network protocols or application layer protocols to disrupt the target's services. So, DDoS attack, distributed denial of service attack, is a more sophisticated variant of a DOS attack that involves multiple compromised devices called botnets to launch coordinated attacks against a target. So these bots consist of computers, servers, IoT devices, or other internet connected devices that have been infected with malware and are under the control of the attacker. And they launch the attack. Now let's talk about how to mitigate DOS and DDoS attacks. This typically involves deploying network infrastructure and security measures such as firewalls, intrusion detection and prevention systems, content delivery networks, rate limiting, traffic filtering, and using DDoS protection services to detect and mitigate malicious traffic and maintain the availability of services. Along with this, maintaining updated software, implementing security best practices, and monitoring network traffic for anomalies can help prevent and mitigate the impact of DOS and DDoS attacks. Next type of attack is man in the middle attack. Imagine that you are trying to have a private conversation with a friend or a family member. However, there is someone sneaky in the middle, intercepting your messages and even altering them before passing them along. That's essentially what a man in the middle attack is in the digital world. So, a man in the middle attack happens when a malicious actor, so this is the malicious actor, secretly intercepts and possibly alters the communication between two parties without their knowledge. This could be between you and a website, you and your bank, or any other online interaction. So, first, the attacker positions themselves between you, the user, and the target, like a website or online service, to intercept the data you are sending and receiving. Once in the middle, the attacker can monitor the traffic passing between you and the target. They can see sensitive information like login credentials, credit card details, or personal messages. And in some cases, the attacker might alter the data before passing it along. For example, they could modify a payment request to redirect funds to their own account or change the content of a message to manipulate the conversation. The goal of a man in the middle attack is typically to steal sensitive information, perform unauthorized actions, or simply spy on the communication between the two parties. To protect against man in the middle attacks, it's essential to use secure communication channels such as encrypted connections like HTTPS, and to be cautious when connecting to public Wi-Fi networks or accessing sensitive information online. Additionally, using strong authentication methods like multi-factor authentication can help mitigate the risk of unauthorized access even if the communication is intercepted. Next type of attack is SQL injection attack. Imagine that you are a librarian. So people go to you, ask for books, and you provide it to them. Suppose say that someone asks you for a book using a very clever trick. Instead of asking for a book title, they ask you for a book along with an additional instruction. So with the book, they are telling you, give me all the books, and while you are at it, also give me the library's secret vault code. So if you are not careful and in a hurry, you might unintentionally provide access to sensitive information to that user. That's essentially what a SQL injection attack does to a database driven website. So in simple terms, SQL injection is a type of cyber attack that exploits vulnerabilities in a website's code to manipulate a database using SQL commands. That is, SQL stands actually for Structured Query Language. Now let's see how it works with an example. Imagine you are running an online shopping website. Here you have a search bar where users can search for products by entering keywords here. So behind the scenes, your website's code uses SQL queries to retrieve product information from the database based on the user's input. Now let's see how an attacker could exploit SQL injection in this scenario. The attacker visits your website and enters a malicious input into the search bar. Instead of searching for a legitimate product, they enter something like this. The attacker's input now contains SQL commands. This is embedded within the search query, and this input is very carefully crafted to manipulate the SQL query executed by the website's code. Now when the website's code processes the search input, that is this, it constructs an SQL query to retrieve matching products from the database. However, it fails to properly validate or sanitize the user input. So this code is not properly validating or sanitizing the user input. The attacker's input, which includes this, gets directly inserted into the SQL query. This effectively turns the search query into something like select star. Star means all from products where name like. So it is supposed to be like if you're searching for jeans, it's going to write jeans, and this is how it is supposed to be. But now what happens? Instead of jeans, you will have the attacker's input. Drop table products. This semicolon here terminates the original query, and the subsequent drop table products command attempts to delete the entire products table. So products is the table from the database which has all the details, and drop table products means delete the entire table called products. The double hyphen comments out the rest of the query to prevent any syntax errors. When the manipulated SQL query is executed, that is, this one is executed, the attacker successfully drops the entire products table from the database, causing all product data to be lost. This could bring your online shopping website to a halt, resulting in financial losses and damage to your reputation. Now, how to mitigate SQL injection attacks, right? Developers must properly sanitize and validate user input, okay? And then use parameterized queries or prepared statements and implement least privilege principles to restrict database access. Additionally, regularly update and patch web applications. So these are some of the mitigation measures. So what do you mean by validate user input? Validation ensures user inputs meet specified criteria. Like for example, it should be of a certain format. Like if it is a date, you don't need alphabets for it. And it should be of certain length. Again, with the date example, if you want to enter date from 1 to 31 or 1 to 12 and then years, you should make sure user input is not more than 32 for the day, and for the month not more than 12, or nothing in negatives or 0. And then sanitization removes potentially harmful and malicious content from the input, like for example, special characters or HTML tags. And then I mentioned parameterized queries and prepared statements. These are techniques used by database programming to execute SQL queries safely by separating the query logic from the user input. Like for an example, select star from users where username is equal to question mark. You put this inside double quotes and then comma, user input, comma, close this. So here we are executing select query from a table called users to retrieve records where the username, so username, this is the column where the username matches the user input. Instead of directly concatenating the user input into the SQL query, we are using parameterized query with a placeholder question mark, as this would not be so much vulnerable to SQL injection. The actual value of user input usually is passed as a parameter separately later on in the code. This is one piece of the code, right? There's lot code written. Maybe it is passed during the execute method. You have some method called execute, then as a parameter you pass it here. This ensures that the user input is treated as data and not as part of the SQL query, effectively preventing SQL injection attacks. And then I also mentioned least privilege principle. This is a security concept that suggests that entities such as users, processes, or systems should be granted only the minimum level of access or permissions required to perform their intended tasks or jobs or functions. This principle aims to minimize the potential impact of security breaches or accidental misuse by limiting the scope of access to resources, data, or functionalities. So, in simple terms, the principle of least privilege means giving users or systems access only to what they need when they need it and nothing more. For instance, a regular employee in an organization might need access to certain files and applications, but don't need administrative privileges that would allow them to install software or modify system settings. Next type of attack we'll learn is zero-day exploits. This refers to vulnerabilities in software or hardware that are unknown to the vendor or developer and have not been patched or mitigated. These vulnerabilities are called zero-day vulnerabilities because they have 0 days since the vulnerability was discovered or publicly disclosed. These are particularly dangerous because they can be exploited by attackers before the vendor has had a chance to develop and distribute a patch or security update. So, in simple terms, zero-day exploit is like finding a secret backdoor into a house that nobody knows about yet. Attackers can use this backdoor to break into the house and steal valuable items before the homeowner even realizes there's a vulnerability. To defend against zero-day exploits, organizations should implement proactive security measures such as regularly updating software and firmware, using intrusion detection and prevention systems, implementing least privilege principles, conducting security assessments and audits, and monitoring for signs of suspicious activity or exploitation. Next is insider threat. This refers to security risks posed by individuals within an organization who have authorized access to its system data or resources, and who intentionally or unintentionally misuse that access to compromise the confidentiality, integrity, or availability of information or systems. Insider threats can come from current or former employees, contractors, partners, or other trusted entities. So, in simple words, an insider threat is like having a spy within your organization, someone who has legitimate access but chooses to misuse it for malicious purposes or inadvertently causes harm. An example of insider threat is a malicious insider, an employee who intentionally steals sensitive information, compromises systems, or disrupts operation for personal gain, revenge, or ideological reasons. Okay. And another example is negligent insider. This is an employee who unintentionally exposes sensitive data, falls victim to social engineering attacks, or violates security policies and procedures due to carelessness, ignorance, or lack of awareness. To mitigate the risks of insider threats, organizations should implement a combination of technical controls such as access controls, monitoring and auditing tools, encryption, and data loss prevention solutions, that is DLP solutions. These are technical controls, as well as non technical controls such as employee training and awareness programs, security policies and procedures, background checks of the employees or partners, anybody like contractors and employee assistance programs. So, these are some of the non technical controls. Additionally, fostering a culture of trust, transparency, and accountability can help deter insider threats and encourage employees to report suspicious behavior or security incidents promptly. Next type of attack is social engineering attack. This is the type of cyber attack where attackers manipulate people into providing confidential information, providing access to systems or resources, or performing actions that compromise security. It exploits human psychology rather than technical vulnerabilities. So, in simple terms, social engineering is like tricking someone into giving you the keys to their house by pretending to be someone trustworthy or by exploiting their trust or emotions. Let's see some of the techniques. First one is phishing. Phishing is sending deceptive emails or messages impersonating trusted entities such as banks, government agencies, or colleagues to trick recipients into revealing sensitive information like passwords or credit card numbers. Then there is pretexting. This is creating a fabricated scenario or pretext to manipulate individuals into providing information or performing actions they wouldn't do normally. For example, pretending to be an IT technician requesting remote access to a computer system. Next is baiting. This is offering something enticing, such as a free download or prize or money to lure victims into clicking on malicious links or downloading malware infected files. Next is impersonation. This is pretending to be someone else in person, over the phone, or online to gain trust or access to restricted areas or information. Next is tailgating. This is following closely behind an authorized person to gain physical access to a secure area without authentication. So I go to my company, I swipe in my card, I enter in. By the time the door closes, somebody else enters without swiping the card, that is unauthorized access. Social engineering attacks can be highly effective because they exploit human vulnerabilities such as trust, curiosity, fear, or urgency rather than relying on technical flaws. To defend against social engineering, organizations should educate employees about common tactics, promote awareness of security risks, implement strict access controls and verification procedures, and encourage a healthy skepticism of any uninvited, unwanted requests for information or assistance. Additionally, implementing multi factor authentication, security awareness training, and incident response plans can help mitigate the risk of social engineering attacks. Next type of attack is password attacks. This is a very huge topic. I have a different video which talks in depth about this with different types of password attacks. I will link that in the description box if you want to know more. But right now, we'll talk briefly about it. These are attempts by unauthorized individuals to gain access to user accounts, systems, or networks by guessing or stealing passwords. These attacks can take various forms and exploit weaknesses in password security to compromise accounts and gain unauthorized access to sensitive information or resources. So it is like someone trying to break into a locked door by guessing the right combination or finding a key. Let's see some common types of password attacks. The first one is brute force attack. Here, attackers use automated tools to systematically try all possible combinations of characters until they discover the correct password. Brute force attacks can be time consuming because they're trying all possible combinations, but they are effective against weak or easily guessable passwords. Next type is dictionary attack. Here, attackers use pre-compiled lists of commonly used passwords, dictionary words, or variations to attempt to log in into user accounts. Dictionary attacks are faster than the brute force attack and can be successful against users who use simple or common passwords. Then there is credential stuffing. Here, attackers use stolen username password pairs obtained from data breaches or other sources to gain unauthorized access to other accounts where users have reused passwords. Then there is key logging. Here, attackers use malicious software or hardware to record keystrokes entered by users, including passwords, as they type them into their devices. Keylogging attacks can capture passwords even if they are complex and not easily guessable. Then there is password spraying. Here, rather than attempting to crack individual passwords, attackers use a few commonly used passwords or guessable passwords such as say password 123 to attempt authentication across many accounts. So they use this password against user 1, user 2, user 3, user 4. So this technique reduces the risk of account lockouts and is particularly effective against organizations with weak password policies. Account lockouts are like locking a door after too many failed attempts to unlock it with the wrong key, making it temporarily inaccessible to anyone trying to gain unauthorized access. So these are implemented by systems or applications to temporarily restrict access to user accounts after a certain number of unsuccessful authentication attempts. Like, for example, if I enter my own password 10 times wrong, then my organization will block me, or 5 times wrong, then my organization system will block me, saying too many failed attempts. But password spraying can bypass this as well because you're using one password for many users. But account lockouts can be very effective in case of brute force attacks or password guessing attacks. So these are some of the examples of password attacks. There are many more. I recommend going through the video that I'll link it in the description box if you want to know more. So to protect against password attacks, organizations should employ a combination of strong technical controls, user education, and security best practices. This includes implementing robust authentication mechanisms, like, for example, multi-factor authentication, and then enforcing strong password policies. Like, the length of the password should be not less than 12 characters or 14 characters. It should have special characters, numbers, alphabets, and regularly auditing and monitoring account activity and staying vigilant against emerging threats and attack techniques. So these are some of the attack types. There are many more attacks. Maybe I'll do a part 2 of this, but if you like today's video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share our videos. That helps us a lot. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you in another video with another cybersecurity topic. Until then, take care of yourselves. Bye bye.